The first step is checking if the file drawing units are set to feet. So that's a pretty easy check. And you can use the AEC DWG command, which essentially pulls up the drawing setup. And you do want to ensure that your drawing units are in feet. And it looks like in this case, it is set to decimal feet. So that's good. You wouldn't want to receive a large survey file that has drawing units set up in inches, because then your scale is going to be all screwed up and it's not going to be correct. So another thing you want to check is, do the text, fonts, line types, symbols, or layers meet the project CAD standards? You want to make sure that the survey encompasses the entire area that you're working in and designing. So do you have a surface? So in this case, it looks like we have a tin surface. You can see the contours. I'll isolate this just real quick. So here's our tin isolated with contours, 1 foot and 5 foot contours, major and minor. Sometimes we'll get survey data that doesn't have a tin surface built. It's essentially just polylines that are depicting contours. So they're polylines that have elevation data attached to them, but they didn't take that next step of creating a actual tin surface that is used for plan and profiles. Does it have a surface, and is it in the right spot? So you'll want to ensure, obviously, you're going to need a CAD license and be logged in to do this, but there's a command called geomap, or you can go up to the top. There's a tab, geolocation, turn on aerial imagery, and you can see it appears that the surface lines up with the project area. So that's good. And you do want to keep in mind also that Bing imagery and Google imagery isn't going to be precise to a T. It's going to have a tolerance to it. About 5 feet. It's a little closer in the city, but when you get out in areas kind of in the middle of nowhere, the tolerance is going to grow a little bit. It's not going to be perfect. In this case, this is right on, real close. So we're in the right spot and we're encompassing all the data that we want, but we do want to check some other stuff. So I'm going to turn that off and end this object isolation. So I have everything on here. Another good thing to check is your layer control. So I'm going to open up my layer dialog box here, which has all the layers in the survey file. And I want to expand this. I'd like to start with just turning everything on, and then I'll get out of this. And I will use a command called laywalk, which helps with making sure the surveyor provided consistent data and that line types and text and everything is set to by layer. So if you have some objects in here that aren't set to by layer, it could cause some headaches down the road when you go to eventually use this in your design file and create exhibits. A lot of times you'll want to visually maybe show an exhibit of a potential route. So we're going to get into the laywalk command and go through each layer. On the defaulted 0 layer here, it looks like we have a bunch of topo points. And so I'm going to select one of them and then select slimmer, or you can just highlight everything in here. Looks like layer is 0 and it's by layer for color. And then line type is by layer. So that's good. Now I'll get back into the lay walk. And this is also a good thing to check for some floating objects. For instance, this DNO key N layer, because there's just one little line here that is attached to that layer. So we'll want to check that out. It's a polyline, some elevation to it. So maybe that was part of something else that wasn't assigned to the right layer. So here's that layer that we just identified, and it looks should be part of this electrical line transmission. So yeah, that obviously was not assigned to the right layer. That's a good thing to flag. So this laywalk command is very useful for survey checks. A good tip is to go down to the laywalk command and then flag those areas, create your own leader and flag a comment, flag it and send it back to the surveyor to fix up. Another thing to check is if any of the files that the surveyor sent over contain an excessive number of reg apps. The way to check that is you type in dash purge in the command line, and you'll get a bunch of options here that pop up. And you'll want to click reg apps here. Then it'll prompt you names that you want to purge. You can just hit enter. Go ahead and hit no. And it looks like there was just one registered app that was deleted. So that told me that there was just one in there. So they did a good job and clean that up. But in the event that you have more than 50, you'll want to report that back to the surveyor and just request that future files, when they're sent over, they should be purged before they're sent over. A lot of times that's one of those little things that doesn't get caught and causes a lot of headache down the road because your file ends up getting bogged down and corrupt and very hard to work in. But yeah, that's the quick and dirty of doing a survey check.